Wherever you are in the world, hello and welcome to Theos Cybernova podcasts. Before we begin, I've got a quick favor to ask from you. There's one simple way that you could support our show, and that's by hitting the follow or subscribe buttons on the app that you're listening to the show on right now. It makes a huge difference in helping to get the show out there to as many people as possible. So please give us a hand and click that button now. Thank you very much.
The Theos Cybernova podcast, hosted by Paul Jackson.
Welcome to another episode of Theos Cybernova podcast. I'm Paul Jackson, and each week I'm digging into the latest trends, challenges, and innovations shaping the cybersecurity landscape, as well as talking to a fantastic mix of leading industry experts, thought leaders, technologists, and legal eagles, all with a particular focus on the Asia-Pacific region. So, whether you're a professional in the field or simply curious about staying safe in the digital age, we hope Theos Cybernova will offer up valuable knowledge and actionable insights for everyone. Today, I'm delighted to welcome a good friend of mine, Sam Coco. Sam is based here in Hong Kong, and we're actually sat together today doing this podcast, opposite ends of the room. But actually, Sam, this is the first time we've done one of these things together. But in the past, we've been sat together on the stage on many occasions doing panel discussions, haven't we? So we're quite familiar with how to get along with each other. But welcome to the show.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks for having me. An absolute honor.
Yeah, no, it's our honor to have you here because you are a cyber legend in the Asia-Pacific region. So why don't you tell us how you became a cyber legend? What's your story? What's your background? Tell the audience where you've got to this point.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. So I'd have to say, probably like a lot of cyber people, I started outside of cyber. In fact, it was I was in tech and I was doing systems admin and all that sort of good stuff and really enjoying solutioning and sort of finding the right path for people who had technical issues. But I kind of got a little bit bored with that, to be honest. And I put my hand up one day and an opportunity came up for a information security officer. This is when I was back in Sydney, Australia. Information security officer. I wonder what that is what my first thought was. And I had to dig into it and look into it. And I thought, yeah, this could have legs. This could be a great opportunity. Now, this is over 15 years ago. And so I put my hand up, I got involved, got the role. And look, I have had quite a journey since, right? And I've done a lot of different things, and obviously I've made my way here into Hong Kong, and that happened not too long after. But certainly my career started in technology space, which is kind of my passion to start with. But it's certainly given me a lot of different opportunities, and which I've embraced.
Yeah, and you've stayed with the same company for many years, right? It's really unusual. When I get CVs from prospective hires, you normally see them move every couple of years these days, but you've stuck with the same company for how many years now?
I think 19 on LinkedIn. 19
Wow.
years. Yeah.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. And is this something you recommend to future, cybersecurity leaders? Stay with the same company, build your career through that, or?
Yeah, interesting question, because I always challenge myself, and I always sort of think about what should I be doing differently, or perhaps what does the grass look like on the other side? And my answer to your question, would I recommend it to other CISOs? I think it really depends on the situation, right? They say you don't leave a job, you leave your boss. And I have, touch wood, had a number of really great managers in my time at Fidelity International. I have not sat still. I've had lots of opportunities. I've had lots of areas to sort of grow into and worked in different teams. And like I said, I've changed moved to a different country. And I've had, put my hand up for everything that's come my way. So I haven't done the same role. I keep adding more capabilities and responsibilities. So in that, it feels like it's been different jobs. I've managed different people. So for a CISO today, look, perhaps if the role wasn't right, perhaps you do want to look around. Of course, you need to keep vibrant. You need to keep on your toes, find things that excite you. But I am grateful for, I've got to say, the company I work for. So I'm good with Fidelity.
All right, and Sam, whoever your boss is now, if he's listening in, he or she's listening in, yeah, give him a pay rise for that. Come on, that definitely deserves one. So, you spoke about your move to Hong Kong, and obviously you're a native of New Zealand, is that right? Oh, I'm getting glad. He's a native of Australia. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. But moving from Australia to Hong Kong, I mean, wow, quite a big step. What prompted that move, and any regrets? We get a lot of negative press here, don't we? Mainly because of geopolitics. And yeah, how do you find life here?
Well, how do I find? Let me answer that question first. How do I find life in Hong Kong? It is fantastic, and I was just having a couple of conversations today with my fellow Australians, and they were saying, "Well, Sam, what are you doing over Chinese New Year?" Well, I'm going to go to Japan, for example. Actually, I'm going to Japan. It's 5 hours away, and when I actually thought about it this year, my wife and I have planned like 5 or 6 different trips over Asia Pac over long weekends. And that's one of the great, I think, one of the great benefits of being here. But it's a variety of people you're dealing with, the proximity to being, working in a global organization, which I do, time zones. There's lots of great things about being in Asia. Number one, but Hong Kong specifically, I love the fact that there is a bit of excitement. There's lots of variety of things to do here. Not to say Hong Kong is perfect. In fact, I'll go out and say no place is perfect.
Correct.
Hong Kong has a lot of great things about it. And if you can manage the challenges that you have, and we are people who can manage a little bit of risk and adversity. I'm not saying it's risky, but you can find the beauty and the opportunities. And that's what I think I've done. And I'm proud to call Hong Kong home.
Fantastic. I think we're on the same page as each other. In fact, I actually bumped into the head of the tourism authority, or whatever they call it here, and I said you should get people like me and Sam on your show, or on your to promote Hong Kong for you, because we truly love this place. Look, and the other thing you do, right, and you do fantastically, Sam, is you give up your time to be part of the community, right? You're not just staying in your office complaining about the long hours. You get out there. I've seen you on the conference circuit so many times, right? That's how we've become friends, really. We've participated in so many conferences together. And I believe this is hugely important, right? Sharing of information with the community, helping to, develop talent, nurture, potential among, people who want to be in this industry, in especially here where we live in Hong Kong. But how do you balance, because you're in quite a sensitive role. You've got to protect, your organization's systems, resources, etc. And yet, to go public, as you often do, how do you balance, the demands, firstly on your time, and secondly on making sure you're not revealing any sensitivities for your organization?
Yeah, it can be a bit of a balancing act, and obviously we need to be very mindful about not giving away key secrets, or talking about anything, specific brands or anything like that. But fundamentally, the practices that we're talking about is definitely something that's approachable, something that you can give in the right level of detail without sort of raising the alarm bells. But importantly, we're giving back, and it gives Fidelity some visibility, right? Which I think is very important. It gives us showing, hey, look, this is the capability that we have within our organization. Something we should be proud of, and it's a good way for us to also, I find, measure ourselves against my peers in the industry. Part of why I go to conferences is to learn something perhaps, and every now and then you get a little nugget of gold. But how do I compare against A, other asset managers, or B, against FSIs, banks, and so forth? But giving back, and I think that's really what I've enjoyed. Well, I've got to say, just add this one piece. You might find this surprising, but I consider myself an introvert. And
No.
I consider myself an introvert. And I really always struggled with public speaking and getting in front of people. And this really took me outside of my comfort zone. And now I feel I can get on stage, particularly when I've got people like you moderating, Paul, and we can have a great conversation that hopefully engages the audience, and ask us good questions, but gives back and hopefully instigates some people to really think possibly differently of what they want to be doing. So I enjoy that, and I really encourage my team of information security officers, to do the same in their countries and regions as well. It's a great way to engage, learn, and also challenge yourself.
I think you just made one of the best points we've had on these podcasts, which is get yourself out of the comfort zone. Because time and again, cybersecurity experts will hide behind the fact that, oh, we've got such a busy job. I can't afford the time to go and speak at a conference, or, my management won't like me talking at a conference. And the reality is they're just not in their comfort zone when they're on a stage. And I did it many years ago, got out of my comfort zone. I was a cop, but I ended up being on television, the police report, and being the spokesperson for cyber as it became more prominent with the Y2K bug. Yeah, I'm showing my age, I know, but but it got me out of my comfort zone and made me feel much more comfortable about doing things like I'm doing now, and obviously the panel discussions that we've had. So that is some of the best advice I think we've had on these shows, that get yourself out of that comfort zone, because communication skills are priceless as a cybersecurity expert. So I had a guest on previously called Nigel Fair, and another Australian, and we spoke about the differences a little bit in the approaches to cybersecurity between Southeast Asia, if you like, and Australia specifically. I know we're all grouped together as APAC, but I think very often Australia doesn't view itself as part of Asia in many ways. But what are the key differences? You've worked in both places. Have you noticed any differences in the approaches towards cybersecurity between working here in Southeast Asia and your work in Australia?
Yeah, that's can be. It depends on the locations. I tend to see that some countries, and I'm just talking about Asia as a whole, I think there's a little bit of island mentality in some places. They think, oh, cybersecurity issues don't happen here, or they like to compare themselves to local industry practices, and that isn't good enough, right? If you're a global organization, that's, oh well, this is what our peers are doing in our country. That is often below what you're looking at globally. So maybe that's a bit different in Australia. I'd say perhaps they are measuring themselves against global organizations, global standards, multinationals. Maybe they don't have that island approach, I guess. And I think this maybe one thing to also consider is maybe Australia, in my experience, was about how do we support the business and clients, get the visibility. I think there's a bit more proactivity there. I think, and I might be generalizing here, perhaps in some areas, people really pigeonhole themselves a little bit, and perhaps they don't quite, I don't know, get their approach the same way as Australia does. This is our process. This is the way we go about things. So maybe that's holding people back a little bit.
Interesting. Yeah. So Nigel commented that he believes that cybersecurity as an industry is better promoted in Australia. So you tend to get more people who are interested in being in that profession, where there's a perception perhaps in Southeast Asia that it's, you're better off being a doctor or a lawyer or whatever. You drive the kids to be in the smart kids to be in those kind of professions. Do you get that sense, or do you think that's just a...
I don't think cybersecurity is as sexy in Asia Pacific as it is in other locations.
That's a good way of putting it.
I will say that. And obviously one thing that we struggle with, I think, in Asia is the, females in the role, right? I think
Very much so.
I will say, though, there is one caveat. I do have a team in China, and I'm fortunate. We've got quite a few in the InfoSec space who are female, which is great. But outside of that, I think it's a real challenge. You go to obviously our conferences, Paul.
Yep.
How many males and female? What's the ratio? It's not high.
100% agree, and shameful on me, but every single guest we've had on the Cybernova podcast to date has been male, and I'm trying my best to rectify that. And you will see in future episodes we are trying to balance things out better. But it's hard because the vast majority of, unfortunately, of leading professionals in this region tend to be male, and diversity is not great. And I think it's something we need to change. Certainly at Theos, I'm trying to hire more females and to help them to achieve those leadership positions, help with the career development, etc. Because it is a big bugbear of mine why we are not able to strike that balance in our industry. Okay, let's move on. So when I just talked to Nigel, there was definitely a perception, I think, that there's more cyber incidents in Australia than the rest of the region. Maybe it's because the news is bigger, but you spoke about the perception that it's an island and she'll be right kind of mentality and be okay. But yeah, we see lots of stories about breaches in Australia, big ones. what do you think about this? I mean, do you have any thoughts on why this might be, or again, is it just because the media are overblown?
Everybody wants a piece of Australia, Paul. I think that's probably mostly it. Look, maybe it's a few things, perhaps. Maybe because Australia's got such a great economic situation. Maybe it's greater visibility. Maybe it's the geopolitical situations it finds itself in from time to time. Maybe it just because of those factors, gets a larger target on its back as well. Maybe depending on who the attackers are. Maybe if it is a nation state, obviously geopolitical, perhaps, but. Perhaps for if there's a financial gain from it, maybe people think, or maybe attackers seem to think opportunity exists for greater monetary gain in Australia. It is odd because you do see large breaches in Australia, right? The ones we had a couple of years ago, all over the news, pretty much every Australian impacted. I'm not sure we've seen to that scale anything else in Asia. Now, that could be also because I think Australia's more mature in the way that, hey, we had a breach, let's put a hand up and notify. And obviously, there's new cybersecurity laws being discussed and drafted around ransomware payments. You pay a ransom, you have to notify the authorities, which is an interesting and quite a forward-thinking approach. But I don't think, in Hong Kong, for example, I'm not sure we are anywhere near how many actual incidents occur versus what's reported. I'm sure the discrepancy is very large.
I think you just hit the nail on the head with your last comment there. Yeah, I do think there is an underreporting of incidents out here because, maybe they're not obliged to, but that's changing. I mean, the new laws coming in are going to require changes in notification, and I'm sure we will see more incidents coming out of this part of the world. So let's see how it progresses. But it is an interesting dynamic, certainly. Let's switch gears a little bit and talk about talent and the perceived shortage of talent. So, do you agree with this? I mean, I spoke to, again, another previous guest was in the recruiting business, cyber recruiting business, Craig Johnson. And, we spoke a little bit there about the perceived talent shortage. Is this something you see in your role? Because obviously you're hiring people, you're trying to hire people. So are we, obviously. And do you find issues in hiring good quality people?
Yeah, look, hiring at the moment is pretty much slow at the moment because we are not increasing our headcount with focuses on costs and so forth. But if I cast my mind back not too long ago, the challenges definitely exist because what you're looking for, it often it's, you want 5-10 years experience and I want all these great skills and all these great capabilities and I need you to be facing off with management and doing these reports and handling all these kinds of incidents. It's, you're looking for the unicorns, which isn't realistic. But I think the challenges do exist depending on the location. Some locations, I think their skills are probably more surplus or more available than others. And also there's perhaps a drift in people's expectations on salary. I think that's also happening. They know there's perhaps a shortage and people are a little bit inflated in what they're looking for and budgets aren't quite accounting for that, particularly in large organizations. That could be a challenge. We know it takes lead time. One of the things we are looking at is how can we build skills on the inside, right? How can we perhaps build up right training platforms and sort of pathways for staff to perhaps in the wider tech. Think about me in my early days. I was in tech. I wanted to get into security. There's a pathway for me to build up some skill, build up some knowledge, so perhaps I can step into that role if and when it comes available. That's the opportunities we are looking at, and also graduate programs. So it isn't always about skills. Skilled professionals is a challenge, again, depending on location. But finding ways you can supplement that with internal people is sort of what we are looking at.
Yeah. No, this is some very valid points that you raised there. So when you're interviewing, and I've done a ton of interviews down the years, as you might expect in my previous roles for potential candidates, it's always interesting to try and throw in a bit of a curveball, isn't it? And I kind of like to ask security leaders, when you're interviewing, do you throw in curveballs? Do you ask a question that you that just really challenges the lateral thinking of candidates? Are there any good questions you want to share?
Yeah, I think I got asked this one question one time, and now I throw it back to people. So, what role does information security play in innovation? So it really makes people think about, well, innovation, security, and when you think about it, of course they go hand in hand, but people need to be thinking about. There's no right or wrong answer. I want to see how people approach it. Right? Are they thinking about, well, security has a role to do this, this, and this, or perhaps they're thinking about, well, innovation as a whole, and perhaps thinking about business requirements and regulations and so forth. So it's a curveball. I want to see how people respond quickly to these kinds of questions.
Interesting. Yeah, no, that is a great question. And yeah, anything that challenges their lateral thinking and communication skills, perhaps more importantly, that is the key. And yeah, I always throw in questions that challenge them in a way that there's no right or wrong answer. It's how you express yourself and how you communicate. So any aspiring future leaders, be aware that the expectation is not on a right or wrong answer, just how you articulate things and how you can reason and how you use logic in your answers. So good one. Good one. I like that. Without getting into specifics, you're head of cybersecurity, etc. With your current organization, what are your main priorities at the moment? What are you really focused on right now?
Just to clarify, it's a head of global information security. So my role is very much a GRC side. A big part of what we do, or my team, I've got information security officers across the globe. We got the cyber risk team under my group, and we look at vendor risk and so forth. Priorities, is definitely around understanding regulations and how we can work better with the business, not just making sure our applications are safe or make sure their projects are going through the right checks and balances, but also with our client engagement. How do we utilize security as perhaps a differentiator to say, hey, this is how great our organization does with information security or cybersecurity and how we protect your information? Because there is a growing focus from clients on due diligence, right? Just like we do due diligence on our vendors, they want to know all the ins and outs, not just security, but all the ins and outs. But we really want to sell, how much we invest and focus on security. So there's that part, and how can we use it as a differentiator? The regulation piece, that is not a small piece of work, and that's complex. And then harmonizing it all, and then bringing together global requirements, then inter-reporting requirements, and of course your operational resilience. There's quite a lot happening in that space. I think finally a big part for us, in the next 12, 24 months, how do we get better understanding on how we measure cyber risk and bring that to the boards, and bring it in a way that means something to the organization, right? Not just, ransomware is such a big threat. This is what it means to us. This is our controls, and actually, this is our risk appetite. And what should we be doing differently, if anything, in order to reduce our risk appetite? But on the flip side, also, how do we measure our compliance? Kind of fundamental, but how do we measure our controls, measure our compliance, and so forth? I will, sorry, just one more thing is a real big focus for us. And look, Gen AI is all over the headlines, but we really want to utilize that in a way that will help us to achieve that compliance. Fundamentally, we create all these policies and standards, we make it so damn complex, right? We make it so hard for people. How can we utilize these tools to perhaps simplify the wording, help people to consume that or distill it into something meaningful for them so they can comply? Because sometimes we bamboozle people, right? We don't do ourselves favors. Oh, just look at that library of 20 documents over there. I mean, let's help people. And I really hope that we can utilize these great capabilities to simplify what people need to do, and hopefully get us to a better position of compliance.
Absolutely, and I think we were both at a conference recently where the focus was on using AI for for security, for the benefit of security and compliance, and there were some brilliant ideas that were brought out of that conference. So again, there's a lot of value, isn't there, in getting out into the community and hearing different points of view and different thoughts. So yeah, great point. I was reading, and I shared this with you, a LinkedIn post just recently that proposed that a CISO is no longer needed. And I'll quote from it. It said that cybersecurity is a shared responsibility not owned by a single executive, and that boards now expect other executives, CIOs, CTOs, and CEOs, etc., to demonstrate cybersecurity literacy, reducing reliance on a single point of expertise. And quote, the end of the traditional CISO does not mean the end of cybersecurity leadership. It means evolving beyond a single point of accountability to a model that is integrated, dynamic, and resilient. It's an interesting way of thinking, isn't it? And what do you think about that?
That's I think that's well, I think we were some way away from there. I agree with the first part of that statement. The accountability, the board, the literacy, 100%, and that's not new. But again, let's be clear here. We're talking about organizations that have cyber maturity, right? They're in the conversations. Oh well, we're this, we're that level of maturity, not the bare bones, and we don't have an IT security function. We're talking about mature organizations, and how much of that is the whole population? It's not a great deal, I don't think. But in terms of the CISO role, look, has to be accountability across the senior leadership. But when push comes to shove, people will need someone to make decisions, right? Somebody to make a decision on how we're going to, what's going to be our baseline on doing this level of control, or what's going to be our choice in terms of this solution, or hey, are we going to set up a function in this part of the world or that part of the world, or hey, we've got geopolitical risks, do we have to manage that? You need somebody at the forefront to make those calls, because it's all well and good to say, well, it's greater accountability, but look, if I talk about cybersecurity, sometimes people don't want to make the decisions, right? And they always look up, and you can't go to the board for every single decision. That's not feasible, right? So I think there is a role, definitely a role. There's a figurehead, someone who's visible, someone who's engaging externally as well. But it will evolve in time for sure.
Yeah, I guarantee you. That's a good answer to that. I think it's important though that we put these points out for discussion, because the role of the CISO is ever evolving, right? It's ever changing. It's a dynamic role for sure, isn't it?
I'd say every role in cybersecurity is evolving, right? Like back to when my early career, maybe I didn't mention, but when I picked up this role, I was the only person in information security, cybersecurity, I should say, in Asia Pacific. Now I grew the team, and today we're about 50 or 60 people. But I was the only person, and the thought of having the granularity of function we have today didn't exist. So it is a fast evolving space. We all have to, of course, learn, keep up to date, understand the regs, certifications. There's so much to do. But importantly, we have to adapt with our business. And to the point about the evolving role of the CISO, I'd say a big step forward, or I should say an important step, will be that greater collaboration, right? That they are a business partner, that they are at how do we enable the business? Not just this team says no, or this team is going to push the button to stop things or whatever else. No, it's more than that. How do we add greater impact in a positive way to the business? Understanding, I think the CISO need to be obviously understanding the tech, but the business, the regulations, the privacy aspects, bringing all of that together. I think there's a lot of gray area. Certainly I find in my role as an ISO, there's a lot of gray area. But I kind of enjoy that gray area because I get to engage with so many different people, and that's what I love about my job. Right, working with different teams up and down. I mean, yesterday, at a board meeting, doing some cyber awareness. Right, really enjoyed it. Obviously, board members there really, really. Enjoyable conversation. We engaged well, and hopefully took something away from it. But being able to converse, being able to engage and have those different conversations, I think is an important role. And I see that happen in CISO, but across different teams.
Yeah, that's fantastic, and I love your energy, by the way, and your passion for this. It's coming across loud and clear here. But one of the questions I'd listed down here is actually related to boards and excos. And I know you've been with the same organization for a long time, so you're probably only seeing one perspective. But obviously you're part of the community, the Cyber Legends community. And how do you see others discussing this? Do you feel that boards and excos are now taking cyber much more seriously than they were, say, 5 years ago?
Yeah, I think they have to. I mean, there's obviously the regulations are sort of pushing in that way. One of the roles that's person in my role, for example, a person in my position in region, there's regulated responsibilities. So I have a duty to making sure that board members and senior management are aware of their accountabilities. They're aware and they are sufficiently aware of perhaps processes and how to handle an incident and so forth. So there's definitely an understanding, a level of understanding. So that's changing. I don't think it's changing dramatically recently, though. I think it's kind of, I think it lifted a lot, and I think it's kind of tapered off. Right? We had Singapore, Hong Kong put in some regulations. Taiwan's put in new requirements for larger organizations. Um, we've got certain in other locations that you have to provide cybersecurity specific training to some boards. So it's happening in pockets, but I think it's more that can happen.
Absolutely. I do a lot of board briefings, exco level briefings, and I think you're right. I am seeing them definitely taking this extremely seriously, as they have to in their roles, managing risk for organizations, because cyber risk is probably top of the list these days for many organizations. But again, it's tough because their skill sets tend to be in different areas. It's more business driven and finance driven, etc. So it's a whole new world for a lot of them. And I think one of the skills that leaders in cyber or information security need to have is, again, it comes back to those communication skills and being able to translate what are very complex concepts into business language, right?
100%. I mean, how do you keep the narrative relevant, right? It's all well and good to show stats and here's our this and these are our incidents and this is what we're seeing here. But how do we keep it relevant for them? How do we make it meaningful for them to say, hey, this is what I'm doing for you to keep your entity or your organization safe? So that's it's not easy, right? Because you've got different countries, different requirements, different this, different that. It's not easy, but making it relevant. And to your point, you said bringing in a language, distilling it in a language that helps them to understand and consume in a way that is meaningful. And the fundamental thing, always think about your audience. When you do your update or whatever you're doing, are they going to say, so what? So what, right? You got to be able to answer that. So I think making sure they know what that so what is, and hey, we did this, or this happened externally, and this is why it's important for you, and why we do it better here, or whatever the message is. Changing that narrative is certainly one we need to work on.
Fantastic. Okay, let me switch things around a little bit because, as you know, I recently joined Theos as their CEO. A bit of a bold step for me, a step into the unknown, but a few months in, I'm loving life there. But what I like to do is listen, right? Understand from the client side what we could do better. And I've sat on your side of the table as well in big banking world, and I always think, what advice would you have for cybersecurity, information security vendors in this day and age? What would you like to see done better? And I know we have a lot of vendors who listen to this podcast, so maybe this advice could be useful for a lot of the listeners.
Let me first of all just say again, congratulations on Paul. Congratulations on the role, Paul, because this, super happy and it suits you very well, and you've even got a special hat, so good on you. Um, the guidance to vendors. This is a tricky one because probably like a lot of leaders, inundated with, can I say crap sometimes? Yeah, look, we get inundated with stuff and noise. What I hate the most is vendors who are trying to trick you, or perhaps being a little bit coy about what their message is. A few emails. Oh, hey, Sam, I understand you do this, this, and this. Well, we found A, B, and C, and sort of suggesting they may have found an issue or a vulnerability, and that's using that as a gateway. And of course, you engage, right? You've got a duty of care. What? You found something great. Tell me about it. Let's have a conversation. Oh, no, we didn't find anything, but we could, and this and that. And that's cheeky. And that I don't agree with. Let me tell you what engaged me really positively a little while ago. So it was about the panel conversation I was doing. I think it was in December, and of course that's on LinkedIn and it talks about AI and cybersec or the topic. And somebody at an organization saw that and they reached out to me and they said, Sam, hey, listen, here's some material from us which relates to your panel, which you might find useful. That's they send me a few PDFs, right? It's a consultancy. I won't name any names.
Yep.
They send me a couple of PDFs saying, "Hey, this relates to your topic. You might find this useful. Good luck for your panel tomorrow." You know what? I was super impressed. How easy is
That is good.
that? I'm probably giving away this person's secrets, but I was super impressed, and I said, "Yep, you want my time? Good on you. Yeah, let's have a catch up. Let's talk about it." And we were having a conversation, right? But just that little bit of finding something meaningful and change the narrative to say, "Hey, this might help you." Yep, you got the foot in the door.
Great advice. Great advice. Thanks for that, Sam. Okay, look, now when we're on panels, you know where I'm going with this, don't you? When we're on panels, you often turn the tables on me, and I'm the moderator, and you're one of the panelists, and you start asking questions back to me. And there, I think I'm in for an easy ride, and I just get to sit there asking all the tough questions, and then you throw them back at me. So I'm going to give you another chance at this. So if you were hosting this show right now, what key question would you be asking me?
I'm taking a moment to think about this one. Look, obviously, you've had from where I'm sitting, a very varied and exciting and probably exciting career full of stories. Paul, if there's one thing that you would change in your career, what would it be? And you can't say nothing.
That's not fair because I think there's very little I would change, and I'm not saying that in an arrogant sort of way. I'm a great believer in having no regrets. Okay, so yes, there have been disappointments along the way. You know, my previous company shut down the capability in Asia just as it was growing and becoming the brand to go to, right? Certainly for DFIR and for many other things. And those were out of my control, beyond my control. So how can I ever regret about something that's out of beyond my control? It's a really great question because I know I'm copping out but really there's nothing because I've made mistakes. We all make mistakes, but I've learned from all those mistakes. I don't dwell on them. I don't, sit down and mope about them. I go, I'm not going to let that happen again, and move forward, right? And by taking this step into being the CEO of a company, I could have easily gone back to being an MD again, same old role of being a regional MD in a larger company, but instead of which I'm embracing a new challenge and doing things outside my comfort zone, to your point earlier, and trying to leave a legacy. And I will make mistakes on the way, I know it, but I'll learn from those mistakes and do it better. So it's very hard for me to pick on a specific thing that I regret because I try not to have regrets in life. So cop out, I know, but that's my answer.
Damn you, Paul. That was a good answer. I think it's, well, you know what? I'm not hugely surprised. It's about resilience, right? I think in our roles, you have to be resilient. And I've always been a believer that you make your own luck, and you make things happen. So similarly, right? I'm answering my own question here. I've got no regrets. You learn from things, you develop from things, and you take that as opportunities to grow and sort of pivot. But it's life, and you've got to be ready for the ups and downs. So I wouldn't be where I was today with making some wrong choices. But we've got to the right place, and I think it's a journey that's what it's all about.
That's a wonderful way to close out the show. But I always have one last question for my guests. And I'm a music lover, right? You know that. And I get fascinated because I don't know in advance the answer, right? So I always get fascinated by the music choices of my guests. I think it speaks a lot about the personalities as well. And I've had a few surprises along the way. So tell me, what do you listen to? Do you have music on in the background when you're working? Do you use it to decompress after work? Or are you not a music person at all?
I wouldn't say I'm. Let me answer your question this way. So you say you try to tell about somebody about what their music choices. You can't look past the 1990s classic by Robert Van Winkle, aka known as Vanilla Ice, Ice Ice Baby, one of the world's best songs ever written. Now, I'm not sure what you can take from that, Paul, but look, I do like Ice Ice Baby. That was definitely one of the classics. But in answer to your question, I do a lot of running. As you know, I try to keep in some sort of shape. So I like music that energizes me and keeps me going. And maybe on the 1990s sort of theme there, I do listen to a lot of 1990s, 2000s, 2010s, like top of the hits, right? A bit of everything. But I'd probably say I do probably favor towards, this might be a surprise to you, but EDM or electronic dance music. That gives me a bit of energy. So, it's probably my favorite kind of genre.
Fantastic. Great way to end the show. Sam Coco, you've been a nice, cool guest. Thank you very much for joining me today. So, Theos Cybernova was presented by myself, Paul Jackson. The studio engineer and editor was Roy DeMonte. The executive producer was myself and Ian Carlos. And this podcast is a co-production between Theos Cyber and W4 Podcast Studio.
The Theos Cybernova Podcast.